Evening. This is the budget work session of the City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, April 24th, 2018, at the council chambers. Mary Ann, hopefully I'm doing this in the right order. Would you take the roll, please?
Councilmember Althouse.
Here.
Councilmember Henry is absent. Councilmember Howdigi.
Here.
Councilmember Norman.
Here.
Councilmember Piper.
Here.
Vice Mayor Allen.
Here.
And we're not sure if the mayor will be here or not.
Hopefully he's just delayed. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to jump right into our fiscal year 2018-19 base budget, capital, and personnel requests and turn it over to Rudy Rodriguez.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and Council. I'm Rudy Rodriguez. I'm the Deputy City Manager. And today's meeting, we're going to go over the budget as Council has requested. We're actually bringing the budget as we receive it before the Mayor, City Manager, budget and county manager myself go through it and actually balance the budget itself. And this is basically so that the council has the opportunity to go ahead and make some, first of all, see what happens, what we get before we balance it. And then secondly is to give you an opportunity to add in, subtract the things that you think are priorities. And of course, lastly, so it's very, very visible that this particular year and this particular budget is not about expenditures, it's about the need for revenue generation. But before we go ahead and get into that, it's only fitting that I should mention that this afternoon, the City of Cottonwood received its 18th Budget Presentation Award from the Government Finance Officers Association. And this is attributed to Helen and Kirsten's diligent work. Traditionally, by this time, they would bring you a balanced budget. But in this particular case, we left it out of bounds for council to review. So, congratulations. We'll put it on the agenda so they can actually have an official award. We'll go ahead and begin with the budget itself. Please, you know, since this is a lot of information, I hope you've had a chance to go through it. It's only a few hundred pages, 124.
It's short.
In reality, this is about a third of what our budget normally is. Our budget is well over 300 pages by the time it's done with all the narrative, charts, and graphs. So it's actually a fairly condensed version of it. And if I miss something, Kirsten, and the only reason I'm up here is not to get in front of you again. I'm trying to stay as far back. Kirsten's voice is struggling, and we don't want her to injure it any further. She still has Thursday's meetings and probably meetings next week, so I want to make sure that she heals up, so I'm sitting out here. But she is here because she has intimate knowledge of the budget, which I've been kind of distancing myself from. So if I overstep my bounds, I'm sure she'll toss something at me or squeal or something at me. The revenue budget projections, and this is a high-level overview. General fund revenues with reserves are at $25,125,000, and the TBT projections for the last 3 years, including this upcoming fiscal year and the current fiscal year, as you can see, are not doing gangbusters. For 2017, we only had a 2.9% increase to $13.7 million. 2018, we had a 5% increase up to $14.5 million. And this year we're projecting just a little over $15 million with a 4% increase. Mind you, traditionally we try to be very conservative with these numbers because we always try to make sure that we slightly underestimate than try to overestimate. And we've never been pushed by staff or anyone else to modify these numbers. And that's what keeps us in the black from year to year. As our state shared revenues, for 2018, our current fiscal year, are at $1.5 million, and for 2015, there's actually a decrease in our state shared revenues to $1.47 million. Our state shared sales tax, that was the urban revenue, which is our income tax. The state shared sales tax has got a slight increase from $1.1 to $1.2 million, about 6%. Just so you know, the City of Cottonwood really does fund its library, and it's always made huge contributions financially as well as support-wise. This year's, we're looking at transferring $889,000 to our library, compared to Yavapai County, who will contribute $158 million. It's quite a sizable amount. We have a very good library program, and it continues to blossom every year. Our HERF revenues decreased by 1.8% to $958,000, and there is carryover balance that is transferred over for the maintenance project in order to complete that particular project. Our airport revenues, there'll be some major changes there, some revenue changes, especially in expenditure changes, and that's because we were looking to contract with an FBO. He presented to you, that was our last council meeting. So there'll be some changes there. The transfer of that to that particular fund from general fund is $12.9 thousand. And if you notice, the tone here is general fund pumping money into other funds because they can't support themselves. So we continue to do that because it's important that we continue to care for those particular funds. The two enterprise funds are fully self-sufficient. We do not transfer money into their accounts. They do not transfer any money to our accounts except for essential services that they need, such as finance, IT, HR, and a couple of other departments that actually work out. Some of the public works people are charged off to them, not fully, only for the work that they actually participate in. But we don't transfer any of those funds to the general fund, and we don't transfer general fund money into those particular enterprise funds. We're currently going through the rate setting process for both of these utilities, but we cannot budget the amount of increase that we're going to be asking for because it hasn't occurred and we're still a few months away before it actually does occur. So we can't actually budget for these particular amounts. User fees for the water are at $8 million, and their interest accounts are bringing in $237,000. As far as our waste revenues, you can see there's a significant drop compared to water. They're at $2.7 million, and their interest is, obviously is considerably less at only $7,000. And again, we can't budget there are any rate changes for them unless they actually occur. And please stop me as we go along so I can go ahead and answer questions rather than running back and forth. So if you have any questions that come up, please interrupt me. Budget expenses, these items are in the budget at this point in time. We do have the COLA, it's still in there, the cost of living adjustment for $350,000, the merit program for $395,000, and the longevity program at $63,200. Right now, what you'll see in your budget showing that shortfall is just the base budget. And basically, the base budget is what does it take to open the doors right now and continue to function. No additional staffing, no additional capital, and no additional programs. It also includes our debt service and lease payments, which this year are going up a little bit because we're replacing our entire PD fleet as well as some admin and parks and rec vehicles. And we'll touch on those in a couple of points down further. Transfers in and out of general funds to support other funds. We are obviously increasing it by a little over $400,000 from 1.2 to 1.6 million. Our enterprise fleet lease that we just approved has a one-time payment of $188,000, and that is for upfitting our police department. And as a matter of fact, the cost to upfit them is double that amount. We only have to pay for half of it, and the reason we do is when we go to sell them, a lot of that equipment actually doesn't bring back any value to them. We're trying to work out plans with our current fleet to try to get other municipalities that have vehicles to be able to compensate us, and so some of our vehicles that we're going to be letting go are still going to be outfitted with a lot of really good equipment, and they're in relatively good shape. The annual lease for the enterprise fleet for the 38 vehicles we're looking at is $331,000 a year. Other things that are on here, we have our 60-day reserve. is 16.66. GFOA recommends that we keep 2 months of expenditures from previous year on hand. Ours is currently at 3.1 million. Our capital reserves, this is cash on hand. This has been something that the council had requested years ago, and we continue to maintain it. During the down economy, we basically froze it. Council didn't want to keep adding to it, and that was fine. And if it sits at $1 million, any interest that is earned on it goes into the general fund for use, but we do keep $1 million in cash. Undesignated reserves, we always keep 100,000. Previous councils and this council, if it's their pleasure, we will continue to budget $100,000. That's basically a small buffer that we have in case things come across where we've already expended all of our, let's say, contingency funds. Many times we'll use this particular account to go ahead and absorb some of those costs. It also provides a buffer in case our revenues don't start to come in, are not coming in the way we expect them to. This gives us a little bit of time to go ahead and make adjustments to our revenues and expenditures. Our contingency fund for the council is sitting at $14,000. The next couple of items are something that we probably need to talk about. It's come out a number of times about how to deal with some of the outside agencies. In the past, and we continue this coming year, Senior Center, $55,000, Building Community Grants, $15,000, outside agency fundings, $20,000, Old Town Association, $10,000, Birding Festival, $1,000, another $1,000 comes out of our water for the Birding Festival. Welcome Home Vets, $2,000, which is new for this coming year. You have by broadcasting for council meetings, $42,000. And the another thing in the budget is the city manager's executive search, about $23,000 for that particular program.
Can we?
Yes.
I do think we should talk about these, and I don't know if you want to do it now or later, but we've talked up here about not necessarily giving these associations that we've always given money to, money just because they've always gotten it. Going forward, just putting that dollar amount maybe in the building community grants and having it be a more competitive process, all because I'll just pick Old Town Association at the top of the list there. All because we've always given them $10,000 doesn't mean we necessarily have to give them $10,000 every year. And what are they really doing with that $10,000? So I know we've talked about it several times up here, and it's something I'd like to see changed. I know it's something the mayor and I have talked about, and he's not here, but I know that it's something him and I, have also talked about, making it a more competitive process, like the building community grants, where you actually apply for the money, go through a process, and then, who gets the money can change from year to year.
Okay, I'll jot it down and we'll come back to that one. I've got it. That'll be one of the first topics we can discuss once we've done the presentation.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, great day. All right. Expenses that are budgeted, we have grant revenues and expenditures, including matching funds. In the airport, we have a $277,000 grant with a matching fund of $12,375. The fire department has 3 grants, $50,000, matching is $12,250. Police continues their VOCA grant of $71,000. Its matching is $14,000. That's for the victim assistance program. Switch that. I'll explain in that other second. That is in the budget currently, and their GOHS grant, Governor's Office of Highway Safety grant for $63,800 is in the budget also. There is no matching. That includes some overtime and a motorcycle. Engineering, $3,034,890 with a matching grant of $740,000 and $740,600. $740,690. Okay, get my tank tumbled. The Parks and Rec has a $260,000 match with $60,000 match, and Transit has a $2 million grant with $624,000 matching fund.
Rudy, these are prospective grants, or these are grants that have already been awarded that we need to have the matching for?
These are not been awarded just yet, but they are in the process. I don't believe anyone has been approved, did you? Boca has already been approved, so the rest of them have not been approved, they're
Okay.
all applying for it. And remember that if we don't have the budget authority, we can't apply for them.
Right.
As a reminder, we had a sizable Fire Act grant a few years ago for our fire department, and we had to turn it away because we didn't have the budget authority. We just gone through the budget and reduced the budget, so. The capital budgeted. Oop, wait. I decided to go bonkers on me. Okay. There is already, all the capital is budgeted in these particular areas. Water, wastewater capital is already budgeted, street construction, transit capital, and all the grants requests are all in here at this point in time. Wanted to go ahead and mention that as we go through these particular programs, we did have a meeting with department heads, and they went ahead and took all of our personnel and all of our capital, the requests, and prioritized them based on what they felt were the highest priorities, and the department heads that put up those particular capital and personnel projects basically agreed with the rankings. And that's what you'll see here today. You won't see a lot of other capital that basically department heads have agreed to push out to future years. So we're talking this year, the things that they would like to see in their budgets. In front of you, I know these numbers are really, really small. Obviously, you have it in your packet. The real important number is the one at the very bottom left-hand corner, the $5.8 million. In reality, it's already at not 5.8, 1.5 million. It's actually already right close to $1.7 million because we're making some changes to the communications department that are necessary. So we're going to add in about $114,000 or so in additional costs. So we're starting off with 1.7, not 1.57.
And Abridi, I want to reiterate again, because I know this is something that the fake news will take and run with. This is not what we're over budget. We're working the budget now. This is the purpose. Normally, this doesn't come before the community. They don't see this portion of it. It comes to us already cleaned up, and then the council starts making negotiations on other items. So I just needed to reiterate that.
And yes, correct. That's a fact. Traditionally, we bring back, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we bring in a balanced budget by this time. This year, council wanted to see all the different things that we pushed aside, moved to a different year, moved out to a later part of the year. So we would overlap 2 different years. We're bringing all that to you now so that you can make some of these decisions and see what staff and admin has to do when we balance these budgets. And one of the good things about bringing the budget like this to you is so you can see that there is very little fluff, to use the word, in these particular budgets. At this point, we're not, again, I can't repeat enough, it's not necessarily the expenditures that are causing this problem, it's the lack of revenues that we're having and we have had for a number of years. And so some of the more tenured council members have probably heard me tell you that we need to do something about revenues or trend back our expenditures. But we did have a lot of capital projects, and we've done a lot of great things with the revenues that we have had available to us. But we're getting to a point where we need to do something about that. Again, we're looking at $1.7 million worth of shortfall at this point in time. The current budget total for all funds is $71.8 million. Don't let that number scare you, because once before we were over about $130 million in our budget when we were doing refinance work in our wastewater department, and our water department. So this is not necessarily what we're going to spend. This is our budget authority for this upcoming year. And anything we increase, it'll go up. Anything we take off will go down. But bottom line, this is our budget authority that we currently have. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to spend that amount. All funds are balanced except general fund. As a reminder, the reason they're balanced is because the general fund is pumping money into them to balance them out. Consequently, it causes us the deficit that we currently have. Again, past years, we've always presented council with a balanced budget, and staff normally works to cut those deficits basically behind the scenes in offices and meetings that we have in our different locations. Some balancing suggestions, because as I can't repeat enough, it's a revenue issue, not necessarily an expenditure issue. One of our biggest revenues, provides a little over 50% of the general fund alone, and that is our local sales tax. In front of you, you have what we currently estimate to collect for 2019, $15 million, and of course the percentages that are up there. 1% would bring in $5 million. 0.65 would be $3.3 million. 5% would be 2.5, and a quarter would be 1.25. And basically, we've extended out what that would mean once we include the county and the state tax.
Rudy, what did Sedona recently? They went up 0.25?
They went up to 0.5%. As a matter of fact, Sedona is 3.5. Camp Verde is 3.65. Jerome is 3.5. Chino Valley is a full 4%. Clarkdale is at 3%, and we're at 3% in the Verde Valley. Other balancing suggestions that we're looking at, if we remove the COLA longevity as we have in past years, we're looking at $413,000. But might I suggest that if we do remove the cost of living, we should allow the range itself to move up, even if no cost of living is adjusted, because that allows us to keep competitive with the markets around us. Just a suggestion. We've done it in the past, but I recommend that if we don't give a COLA, that we at least make that adjustment. Ask departments to cut their operational budgets. Mind you, again, these budgets are really slim, and to be really brutally honest, if we do an across-the-board cuts, the ones that are going to suffer are PD and fire, because they happen to be the largest ones. You can't very well try to recover $1 million off of small budgets like the city clerk's office, finance, Casey Rooney and his budget. They're way too small. You'd decimate those departments if you would try to make up the difference from there. And of course, if you try to make it off of fire and PD, they too will suffer quite a bit. We can suspend the merit program for a year. That's about $394,000. Of course, the issue is you may have some morale problems and employee issues. Remembering that things for them have not increased, have continued to increase. Our insurance is going up an extra 3%. Retirement is going up. So suspending the merit program doesn't always provide any real savings. It causes us more grief. Move grants and grant capital out to next fiscal year. If the grants and stuff are available, that'd be great. But a lot of grants are not available in future years. It's this year or not. It would decrease our transfers out, because obviously they wouldn't need to match. And then of course, moving stuff to future years doesn't solve the problems, because with the old saying is you're just kicking the can down the road. And we've done a lot of that over the last few years, and you'll see it in the numbers as we start going through them. I wanted to back up a little bit to the base budget slides. As you can see, I don't know if you can see, on the very far right side of this, yeah, there you go. I pointed at myself. In the far right, oh, well. Okay, there you go. On the far right here, one of the questions I posed to Kirsten is, why is it that we're growing so large? If you look at it, most of them are 7, 6, 5, 9%. There's very few of them that are going, very few of them that are going down. There's a couple of reasons why that we need to look at. One of them, of course, health insurance is going up. As I mentioned, it went up 3%, and that affects everybody and their dependents. The merit and longevity program are still in there, so is the COLA. Retirement, obviously, is a big issue, especially for fire and PD. Theirs have gone through the roof, and they continue to grow every single year. Again, let me just tell you that's not their fault. We owe this to them. Another thing, of course, is some of the costs for the lease purchase, not lease purchase, but lease of the enterprise vehicles are already in here, so you'll see a little bit of a spike in PD, admin, parks and rec. And then, of course, lastly is we're at a point where we need to start maintaining some of our buildings. If you look around at some of our city buildings, they're getting pretty bad repair. They need to paint. They need, fascia boards replaced. Paint is flaking. So we've made those allowances to try to get our buildings up to some reasonable standard. There's no reason why we should have ugly looking buildings. I think we should at least take care of our buildings as best as we possibly can. So that's what's probably causing a lot of these spikes here. There is one that you might, that's going to stick out. The city council, I'm not sure what you guys are doing, but $4 million, really? Just so you know, and so the department heads know, and the public knows that every year we budget all of our reserves in the general fund as revenues, and we put them also in our expenditures. And the reason being, again, is we have to have budget authority. If there was a catastrophic event, we want to make sure that we don't go over our expenditure limit, so we go ahead and make sure that we budget that amount. Traditionally, last year we budgeted $2.3 million, and we got reduced just about to nothing, and then we rebudgeted $4.5 million worth of reserves, showing that 1,663% increase. Again, this is not necessarily, this is our budget revenues. There is an offset in our reserve revenues accounts. Okay. We're going to get into the personnel requests. Oh, I can hear it. I'm using both this because I took some notes on here to show them on this slide over here. These are new position requests from our staff, and they are ranked 1 through 10 as far as our departments that went through this. We had a ranking process, and we decided there were certain positions we could push aside, others that we really thought we needed as a whole. And as you can see, the building official is one of our top priorities to try to get on board. That doesn't mean that any of these are much less important. It's just that we had to prioritize because we're at a point where we need to have some of these staff members brought into the fold. The total amount of salary we're talking about, if we were to budget this entire lineup, we're talking $390,000, including benefits. We're talking $564,000, a little over $500,000 just to bring on the staff members. There's some part-time requests for about $58,000 worth of part-timers in the budget. Not in the budget, these are just requests. Any questions on the personnel before I move on to the capital part of it? As you can see, quite frankly, there's actually more personnel requests that are not on this particular slide. And again, we ranked the top numbers up there, and the rest of them are probably going to come in. Anything we don't budget this year is probably going to be on next year's budget, along with some other staff members that are being requested that weren't on this particular listing.
You skipped the reclassification file?
Excuse me?
You skipped the reclassification file, was that
Yeah.
intentional? Go back up one. There you go.
Oh, okay.
And Rudy, just to clarify, these are not in the budget right now?
No. The reclassification section here is the same as the new personnel request. They're all prioritized as far as what we would like to have. As you can see, the library's got a really big list of reclassifications that they'd like to do. Some don't have numbers related to them. Some do have small numbers related to them. And then, of course, we work our way down to the rec center, maintenance, staff, engineering, finance, fire, and so on down the road. That amount of reclassifications, Benny's in all, would be $206,000 if we were to approve all of these requests. Hey, as you can see, all of these have individual numbers for both salaries, benefits, and then the totals, so council can be aware of how much each of these employees is going to cost us, whether they're full-time employees, new full-time employees, reclassifications, or part-timers.
Rudy,
Yes.
touch on the last one. That's a latecomer, just to make sure that.
That's why it's not.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, just to explain it. If you could explain. to
Oh.
council that's not a ranking, because it is late nature coming to the.
Okay. That's the change, as I mentioned early on, when we first started talking budget, that the number is now 1.5 million, it's 1.7. And that is because of the last line down here is something that we have been working, that we are trying to reclassify our communication specialists. One of the issues we have is when they went to the new center, they were still under the old job description, which only entailed police. We've never gone out and actually changed the job description to include police and fire, and as you probably already know, we have a lot more fire than we have PD, because we only dispatch for our local PD. We have districts, a number of districts on board. So we need to make this particular change in order to make them whole for the job that they're doing. So that's the spike from 1.5 to 1.7.
So if this isn't in our budget, how does it change our budget from 1.5 to 1.7?
This particular item.
Just that one item?
Just that one item.
So you're just kind of considering that one a given?
Unless you want to take it out. But we're looking at it as, remember, everything that's in the budget, even the items that make up that 1.7, okay? Council can go ahead and take any of that stuff out.
Right, I understand that. I'm just trying to get my head around where the 1.5 and then the 1.7. So these other $75,000 worth of changes are not included in the 1.7.
What are the 75,000?
Well, if you take 205 minus 137, I was doing very quick math, 65,000.
Yeah, you're correct. I mean, really, the deficit, if we want to stay consistent, is 1.5. If the council wants to consider any of these reclassifications, including the communications specialist, then that 1.5 number goes up.
Okay, thank you.
Unless we do cut somewhere else.
I just think we need to be consistent when we're talking about stuff.
Right.
These are either in the estimated budget or they're not. You
Right.
can't have some in and some out.
I get you.
Just to make it clear for the public as well.
Okay.
And have these been ranked, these reclassification requests, other than the communication specialist?
Yes.
Okay.
He said that the reclassifications and the FTE requests were all ranked, except for the last one, yeah.
Yes, the numbers on the left side would indicate the ranking.
And just that last one, I noticed it, I just want to make sure everybody notices it, but it's not one person, you're talking about reclassifying 17 people.
That's the staff, that's a communication staff, right?
I just want to make sure everybody else noticed that.
Okay, do part-time personnel. Total staffing if we were to approve all the staffing that's on there, would be $828,000. Any questions on the personnel? All right, moving on to capital, over 35,000. We have a threshold of 35,000. Pretty much anything over 35,000 is obviously fairly large. We've talked about raising that number to about 50,000 because nowadays if you get a truck and put overhead lights on it, you're at 50 grand. But we haven't done it yet, so we still use anything over and under the $35,000 threshold. What we have here are the rankings for the top items. Again, as a note, there are other items that are not on the list that we've decided that, staff decided that those are the priorities that staff had, and they wanted those priorities to come to the city council. The flood mitigation, the $2.7 million there, includes a matching amount of $679,000. The enterprise is in there, the enterprise fleet, the $568,000. It's also in
Rudy?
the budget.
Yeah, so, yeah, I think it's important to make sure we identify which one of these have been budgeted, because some of them
Right,
are included.
That's why I'm going down the list on those. The flood is on there, the enterprise fleet. Let me explain a little bit about the enterprise fleet. There's two numbers that are in there, okay? One is the amount to purchase the entire, is that right, the entire program? The 568 is the lease amount.
The 568 is the lease amount of 300 and something, and then the one-time payment of 187.
Okay. So that's just a lease amount that will continue for about 5 years.
And then it won't be for 5 years. Okay, I'll squeak louder. The 370,000 will be for the 5 years. The one-time payment's only this first one.
187,000 is for one time. Then we also have a parks grant that is up there, implementation of the Verde River Recreation and Trails Plan. It's $160,000. That and its matching grant amount is in the budget currently. And then also in the budget is, of course, the airport master plan itself. The other items that are on here, the ladder truck is not on there, the backhoe is not on there, and the replacement of warranty camera equipment currently is not on there.
And just a recent update, the Trails Master Plan grant, we did get awarded $107,000 on that, so the match will go down a little bit. But, so that is a done deal.
Okay, then we've got,
So I'm confused, if those are budgeted, why do you have the total down on the bottom for all the capital requests? Only 3 of those have not been budgeted?
well, that's why we're highlighting, as we put these things together, we try to total up to tell you this, these are the total amount of things that they actually, that's the staff rank as some of their top priorities to try to get onto our capital. Some of these, we were fortunate enough to go ahead and get them honored because, again, they were grant funded, so we have to put the grant funded programs in here. Because if we don't, and they require a match, and we don't put them in there, then we don't have the budget authority for them. And since many of them are already being applied for, we need to go ahead and put them in there right off the bat. We're just going ahead and informing that these are the top rankings. There's a few that are basically funded by general fund that are going to go ahead and are still out.
And Rudy-
So
oh,
I think it's important for the council to recognize that, like the flood mitigation project for Del Monte Wash, you know, our match on that's about $700,000. If we don't get that grant or we choose to delay that, that potentially saves you $700,000 right off the bat. That is in the budget because it is a grant-funded project. And so anything that was grant-funded, we've gone ahead and added in the budget. So, I mean, we could say we're not interested in any of these grants And then on most of them, there's that match savings that occurs.
Why is item number 3 on this list?
Because it was ranked as one of the top priorities. As you
But
can
it-
see, these are #1 projects.
But it's under 35K.
No, it's not.
Or
It's 60.
it's an oops. Okay. So it should have been on the under 35K.
Good
Less.
catch.
Good.
Oh, I see. I see.
But it's still not budgeted, so it doesn't really matter. But I was just curious if it was lumped with something or.
Got it.
And these are our #1 projects. Our #2 projects, remember that everything was ranked #1, 2, and 3. The #2 projects are our City Hall, new EKG monitor defibrillators, street crack seal machine, and its materials, engineering, of course, from 6th Street. The items that are budgeted, that are in the budget currently, of course, is the engineering for 6th Street, because it's a grant. The airport fence is in the budget. That's #5 because it is a grant. And the police, of course, we mentioned earlier, the Harley motorcycle is currently in the grant. Looking at those items that are over 35,000, of course, we have our project here as the engineering for Mingus Street Avenue from 8th to Main Street. That is obviously in the grant, in the budget itself. We hate to leave Mingus half finished.
Our phones would really ring.
God, they're already ringing. Don't do that.
I don't know, some neighbors might want us to quit building on that thing, but.
I gotta get bigger dogs.
Street striping is already in the budget, and then the trail design study is also in the budget. That one is also grant funded for $50,000. So those top 3 are already in the budget. Capital, oops, there you go, capital under $35,000. The only one that is in the budget currently is the FBO operator, and that's because we are getting ready to bring an FBO under contract. All the other items that you see here, none of them are in the current budget. Right?
Right.
She has spoken. All right. The second listing of projects that we have, none of these are currently in the budget. As you can see, there's EMS equipment, streets equipment, IT equipment, airport, parks, public works, economic development, and courts are all up there on that list, and we haven't budgeted any of these items at this point in time. More under 35, we've got IT equipment for servers and replacement for 37, airport, sealing the taxiways for 7100, streets, wet crossing beams, beacons, fitness equipment for fire, medical services, parks and rec replacement of vapor fold for the gym dividers, totaling 100,000. The total amount of the under 35 program would be $493,000.
Excuse me, Rudy, so none of these items are funded, are in the budget, right?
Yes.
This list?
Well,
Okay.
oh,
This #3 projects?
No, none
No.
of them are in there.
Thank you.
we always ask the department heads if there's any kind of new projects or new programs. These are not capital, these are not personnel. They're programs, whether they be local programs or regional type programs. Go ahead and add them on there to see if there's some interest in them. We're looking, community development would like to have support for his historic preservation efforts over the next 5 years or so. They're looking for about $8,000 for this year. Maintenance needs to cover, obviously, a lot of maintenance projects that we've put aside, about $150,000, and that's in general. And then, of course, the police to cover the maintenance and prevent deterioration, and this is on your facility,
Public
correct?
safety building.
On the public safety bill. $40,000, as you may recall, some of the outdoor steel, it just had primer on it because it was red and it fit the motif, but in reality it needs a little bit of TLC. And that's all we have at this point in time. We've got a few more pages to go through. This is where we need to ask you, what are your wishes? The first thing, obviously, is the outside agency funding, and then we can bring up other sheets if you'd like to go through the different departmentals. We asked the department heads to be here. We had them already present to the council their goals, accomplishments, and their performance standards, and where they would like to be over the next year. And we thought it'd be good for them to be here for any questions you might have about their budget, both the base budget or any items that they would like to have on board. We didn't want to do the normal presentations we've done in past years where we have them stand up here, or actually the last few years it's been me standing up here telling you this stuff. But we wanted to make sure that if you had questions for them to help you make decisions on what you want to add or subtract, it would be important that they be here. Again, I can't stress enough, this is really a revenue issue. It's not an expenditure issue, because anything we try to trim off right now means we need to do something about how we're going to deal with any type of programming or staffing, or everything we trim off right now is going to affect somebody or something in some sort of way. So the first thing I've got on the list is, how would the council want to deal with the funding of outside agencies?
Can we go back to that slide, Rudy?
Sure.
Mayor Linsky wasn't here when we went over it, and I did bring up a conversation you and I had about making that process, more competitive. I believe Randy Garrison has also spoken somewhat about it, about not necessarily giving the same amount of money to each organization, all because they've always gotten the money.
Right.
We need to take a look at, who are we giving money to? And one thing I didn't see up here was the Humane Society. And we had talked about the fact that we needed to support our Humane Society, but I never saw that money anywhere called out.
It's budgeted in ordinance enforcement, and we have a contract with them, so.
Okay, because in the past, it's been up on one of these,
Yeah.
It's been with the Senior Center and Old Town Association and these others, so the Humane Society is still getting funded. Okay, good.
Great. We didn't get a request for an increase on it, did we?
I didn't see anything.
But on the contract, they can, at their option, request up to a 6% increase every year. They haven't requested one. They've changed executive directors. John is no longer there. He had said that he wanted a 6% increase, and I said, give me a letter. He didn't give me a letter. Now they have a new executive director, and we haven't gotten anything from the new executive director. So for this year's budget, we went ahead and budgeted the same amount as last year.
What's that amount at 40-something thousand?
I think it was more than that.
43.
43.
Oh, okay.
And how long does that contract last?
It's really a year-to-year contract, isn't it?
But it's a requirement
It's-
that we have to have a humane, we don't have to have a Humane Society, but we have to have something to do with for our animals, or just like we have to have something for our people.
Mm-hmm.
We'd have to look. I don't remember
Okay.
what it is. I think the problem, the issue we have with them is that if we don't have a Humane Society or some way to dispose of,
Not dispose.
okay.
You'd be nice.
Well, I think that is our
How to deal
legal
with-
requirement, right?
with animals.
Right.
If we can't find a way to deal with them, then we have to go ahead and take it on ourselves, which
Mm-hmm.
means we
We
need
have to.
staff, insurance, all the bennies, and a location.
Right.
Like Camp Verde, their marshal office, does it. But I don't think we want to get in the business of policing. cats and dogs either.
Right.
All right. Does any suggestions on the outside agencies? And let me step back a second. In past years, we've had the outside agencies come and present. This year, we did not ask them to present because we needed to settle the issue of how we want to deal with them first. If you still want them to come in, we can try to get them in here next Thursday or the following meeting after that. But traditionally, they come in and they make a presentation on what they've done over the year, who they serve, and the impact that it has on the community.
You know, I said this earlier, I still like the idea of, you know, having a lump sum, and if that means increasing the building community grants or having, you know, a different program, but where people submit and compete and we have, you know, a deadline against it. And, you know, because I think there's other agencies out there that, you know, could also benefit from us helping them. You know, I think all because we've given you the money, you know, last year doesn't mean, what are you doing with it?
And I agree. I think some way to track the effectiveness of the money that we're giving those organizations, because it's really not ours to give. I mean, it's the citizens. You know,
Yeah.
It's their money. We want to make sure that money's going as far as it can. And in some cases, you know, like some of the agencies under outside agency funding, I think there are other agencies that provide similar services, but I think some agencies have become basically line items on the budget. So we fund them year after year with no thought of perhaps another agency being able to provide that service for less or more effectively in our community. So I think it is something that we and I'm okay having it, you know, remaining in a holding pattern this year, I think, but maybe it's something council should look at for the coming year.
That's why I left it in for this year, because you had said, keep it this year and talk about doing a different program for the future years.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've already started the Building Community Grants program for this next year.
Right.
It's in the process right now.
What agencies are under the outside agency funding for 20,000?
That 20,000 is just
Old Town Center for the Arts,
Okay.
William Eaton's center over here.
So what we could do is, this kind of gives these organizations a year to prep and let them know that they're not going to be getting this in their pocket unless they approach us, fill out the appropriate paperwork, and sell us on what they're doing. And then it gives others opportunities. Is that what we're talking about for next year?
If that's what council would like, that's fine. We probably need to put it on the agenda somewhere so that we can have a longer discussion about it, maybe bring in the agencies so they can give you their feedback of the impact it might have for them before we actually make a decision whether we want to consolidate and treat it with better building community grants, or we may end up keeping it the way it is. But I think it's important that we have that discussion with the council and maybe the agencies also to help you make the decision. As a note, every quarter we get some sort of a report, not always fancy ones, but the Humane Society always gives us their intake and the adoptions that they have. We have the Lane Bremer always gives us their amount of money, not amount of money, but amount of meals that they do, Meals on Wheels and so forth, and the activities that they have, always provides us with a calendar. William Eaton comes down here once a year and he gives you a pretty long, extensive idea of the programs that he puts together and the benefit of his program to the city. So they do come in and they do some sort of reporting. We have requested financial reports on the Humane Society and also on the Senior Center to try to get a gauge of how they're doing. And for the most part, I think that they're surviving, but they don't have a lot of resources. But again, I think it's an odd thing that we probably need to put on the agenda once we get the budget done, maybe have the discussion for next year.
What about Old Town Association? Does anybody know what that 10,000 is going towards?
I believe most of it goes to marketing, if I'm not mistaken, trying to market Old Town for events and such, and that's about all I know about them.
They're a group that hasn't been very good at providing quarterly reports.
Right. And
Yeah. It's true, too.
And I guess that's kind of, you know, my question is, you know, what are they doing? You know, I mean, $10,000, you know, that could fund some reclassifications or, you know, I mean, what are they doing with it? And what benefit is it bringing the citizens of Cottonwood? You know, not just us up here, but what benefit is that bringing? And is it something that's still needed? I mean, Old Town is pretty well known now. It's pretty busy. None of us can find a parking spot when we come down here for city council meetings. You know, I mean, it's pretty well known to come to Old Town when you come into Cottonwood, come visit the wineries, come, you know. So, you know, is it still necessary to give?
Right. No, I don't.
And do we want to give them a chance to come in and tell us why it's necessary? I'm of a like mind with, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
A like mind of Councilmember Althouse, because the Chamber of Commerce does an amazing job of promoting Old Town with what they get.
Good point. We don't have the Chamber of Commerce in here because they're funded through our bed tax.
I'm just saying they already do this, so are we duplicating services here when we don't need to, and that 10,000 can go to another agency?
Or into the building community grants, and we could, you know, just take that money from Old Town Association, the 10,000, put it in building community grants, and if Old Town wants to apply, I assume they're a nonprofit. If they want to apply, they can go through that process. But I mean, last year at the Birding Festival was explained to me, you know, the Welcome Home Vietnam Vets, you know, all the different cities and towns put money into that. I think except for Clarkdale doesn't. You know, we all put money into that. Sedona puts in, Camp Verde puts in, we put in. It's really, I mean, the outside agency funding, I wish it said what it actually was instead of just saying outside agency funding. I wish if it's just the Civic Center, you know, I wish it actually said that. And then the Old Town Association, I don't feel that it's really necessary anymore.
I think we have it written out like that on the budget. I don't think I ever changed it. I think we have it as outside agency, but that's my bad. I put it in there as an outside agency at the time, and it actually should be the Old Town Center for the Arts.
I think we intended it to be like, this is where you put all the funding for those agencies that might request.
Yeah.
And they ended up being really the only one that requested, so then they got.
So it's Old Town
just stayed
Agency.
there.
Old Town Center for the Arts.
Thank you, Old Town.
And I think one of the things that we should look at is really bolstering that building community grants program.
Agreed.
And then all these, you know, Old Town Association, Birding Festival, all these other nonprofits can then apply for the funding through that grant program, I think. But, you know,
It's a
again, we
good
haven't given
program.
anyone really a heads up. I know there are folks that are talking about it, that we're looking at these things, but I think it'd be good to really involve all the stakeholders in whatever program we decide on. So I think, you know, for this year, other than just doing an across the board cut, I don't know that we can, I wouldn't feel comfortable picking and choosing which ones we decide not to fund this year because we haven't given anyone a heads up.
That's what we get the big bucks for.
I feel perfectly comfortable picking and choosing. And, you know, again, I know I'm picking on Old Town Association, but are they even really in existence anymore? I mean, last I heard that there was only a few businesses that were even part of Old Town Association.
Then again, because we don't know, we'd have to give them the opportunity to speak and approach us for that. That's where the issue lies.
So can we have them come in and speak to us before we make a decision?
Certainly, I think yes, we'll try to get. I'm trying to figure out the timelines because we've got meetings this week and we've got meetings next week. We can have them come in and present. We'll ask them to come in either next Thursday or the next time, the following budget meeting after that, and we can decide then. Just a caveat with the outside agencies, not just outside agency funding, but these outside agencies, as they have a time frame in which they have to submit their quarterly report. If they do not submit the quarterly report, they don't get funding for that quarter. And we have that issue occasionally with the Old Town Association, who doesn't always report their report. They give us their quarterly report. And we've also had that issue with the Old Town Center for the Arts where William just forgets to send us a report. We try not to fund them. Occasionally they'll come in and they'll grovel and we will provide them with the funding. But traditionally we kind of slap them on the hands, tell them next time you miss your quarterly report, you're not getting anything. So we don't always give out all their money.
Can we get a copy of those two agencies' last quarterly report or last two quarterly reports?
I think we've got them available. We'll see, we'll dig up those two and send it to the council.
Because I think that would be helpful. Actually, we should probably see them all. But, you know, I think it would be helpful for us in making a decision to see those quarterly reports.
Okay. Now, mind you, there is no standard for them that says this is the way you bill them.
Right.
Do we just ask them to make sure that they send us something that gives us an idea of the activities that they're going through, who they're providing a service for, and so on?
We should have access to that. We should be able to see that
Yeah.
in making any kind of decision. Yeah. One thing that's not on here, it's not a big deal, but the retreat that we did in 2000, whatever that was, 16, I guess, where we had the professional facilitator come in. I forget what the expense was for that, but I don't know how council feels. I'd like to have our next retreat professionally facilitated as well. And I think it was Marianne, do you remember how much that was off the top of your head? It wasn't much, maybe 1,500, or maybe it was even less than that.
No, I was thinking 24, but I don't remember exactly.
I don't recall.
If Marianne can get that number to person, we'll go ahead and add that in there.
And that can always be under our
She may have it
contingency if
already.
it wasn't
Tell
budgeted.
me who it was.
Do you remember
It was
that?
Jeannie Duncan was the facilitator. And, but we only used her for one day, so it was just the one day that she was here. I forget how much it was, but I felt like it was valuable to have it professionally facilitated, so it'd be nice to budget for that.
Okay. We'll go ahead and research it, and we can go ahead and budget that particular item.
We've paid 5,000.
5,000?
I mean, full town.
Oh, okay. We've only paid 5,000 to Old Town Association so far
This year,
this year, correct?
this fiscal year.
Mhm. All right, so for this particular year, we're looking at keeping it as we have in the past, and we will get the different agencies to come in and present to you their program. And if council wishes to make any changes after that, we still have opportunities for other meetings. Would that work for you?
Sure.
Okay.
And then look to moving this next year for sure, because I feel like we talked about it and we were gonna do it, and now all of a sudden, well, we haven't talked about it enough, and we're not gonna do it. So let's really make this happen.
I agree.
Where it becomes more something like building community grants process.
Does the rest of the council feel like that's a direction we should move towards?
Yes.
Okay.
2,400 to select. 2,400?
We paid her 2,400 for the facilitator.
Steel trap.
Got it.
All right, where else do we want to go?
Hawaii?
We don't have the money.
Next year. I'll be the person that says it. I think we need to look at the sales tax page again, and I think we need to talk about that. And then, the other thing that I think, this is me, that we need to cut is the COLA and the longevity. We have the merit increase. I agree with you with adding it to the salary ranges. But, I've been very vocal up here, and staff can throw tomatoes at me, but I do not agree with COLAs and merits. I just don't. And I think that's $413,000 that, we can cut, and then I think we have to look at sales tax. It's my opinion.
Did you say COLA and longevity?
I said both, yeah. So I don't mind being the person that has to say it, and hopefully staff brought really rotten tomatoes, so throw at me.
No, I think it's, go ahead.
No, agree with you, Councilmember Alhouse. I mentioned it at the last meeting. I think that you know, the way we fund our merit, I think we could look at that. There is savings there to be had, and I think it would still suit its purpose, which is to reward people for excellent productivity. But I think I'm not talking about getting rid of it or abolishing it, but maybe changing the scale on it somewhat, you know, to reflect the fact that we have a lot of other requests that we'd like to fund as well. And it's going to take give and take from everyone to make those requests come through. And, you know, sales tax as well, obviously, but I'm always hesitant to hire on new personnel just because of the, you know, the ongoing expense of it with bennies and everything else. It seems like if there's any way not to, and I know we've had this talk before, deputy city manager and city manager, but it seems like if there's any way to not bring on new personnel, then I think that's better for us in the long run, and I know that you are always looking for efficiencies.
Okay, so we're looking at cutting out the COLA longevity, but add the COLA amount to the scale so we stay competitive.
Right.
Is that correct?
I agree.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
The merit program, do you want to make changes to it? My ruthers is, again, we're so late into the process that I think probably it may be something that we need to, again, bring up at a later time after the budget to go ahead and prepare for the following year rather than trying to spend a lot of time trying to fix it. I know it's $300 some odd thousand, but in reality, I'm concerned that we've got a lot of other things that we need to work on. The amount that we need to kind of try to trim down and cover is substantial, and if we spend too much time on one item, we may find ourselves running out of time. I know we've got 3 or 4 nights. It's up to council.
I would agree with leaving the merit the way it is now, and then for those that want to change it, can move on with discussions as we move into the next year, and we can be prepared for it. But I would prefer to leave it the way it is right now.
I voiced my opinion at the last meeting and was outvoted. So I think it should be, I don't think it should be guaranteed 3%. I think it should start at 0% and go up. But, we had a 45-minute to an hour-long conversation about that. And so, I think everybody knows how I feel. But I guess it's a conversation we have to have, for next year. But I think at this point we need to leave what's there. Since we hashed it out at the last meeting.
I'll be uncomfortable if we go in the direction of increasing sales tax even 0.25% if we haven't shown the public that we're also making uncomfortable cuts to make sure that we're doing the best we can to balance our budget. And I don't mean to take money away from any city employee, but it's a merit program, and we haven't had any issue pooling longevity in other programs, and this is another one of those programs that is, I understand the value in it, but I think we can still provide that value, yet trim a little bit from the overall cost of it. And I would be uncomfortable, again, just raising sales tax and not showing the public that we've also made some cuts.
Just as a reminder, when our city manager came on board, our previous city manager had us on a compo ratio program that was up to 7%, I believe it was. We went ahead and changed that and brought it down to 5%, which is what we currently have. And the whole idea with the compo ratio was it accelerated employees to move up to range it through the ranges relatively quick. Mm-hmm. And we went ahead and modified that so it would be at 5% at the max. And now we basically don't give out 2s or 3%. I mean, 1s and 2%, because if you're getting 1s and 2s, you're basically substandard. And when we get to that point, we're looking to ask you to resign or leave. So everyone's got to make that 3%. Which means you're doing your job. That's what you're supposed to be doing, and you're at least excelling at doing your job. Anyways, that was just some FYI for some of you that have been here before for some time, any kind of tenure, we went through that comp ratio discussion way back when. It was a little hard to manage with those sizable increases.
I just want to voice my opinion. Our employees are our biggest asset, and they're our crown of glory out there. People meet with them, they talk to them, they see them at work. So we really do need to be sure that we take care of our employees properly.
And I just want to bring into focus something. If we have an employee that's making $27,000 a year, and they get a 3% increase, that's $810 for the year. That's not even what anybody in the private industry makes as a bonus at the end of the year. So that 3%, that sounds like this huge number, for the majority of our employees, which are not the top of the scale, is not this huge bonus amount that people think. We're talking less than $1,000 in a year. So split that up into 52 paychecks or 25, how many paychecks it is. It's not that great amount. So that's just me pushing the fact that I don't think it's that bad a deal right now. I understand that we need to cut, but the employees that we're talking about maybe cutting their comp ratio or their benefits are also our citizens. So we can't look at them like they're, oh, we need to show the citizens of Cottonwood that we're making a cut. These are the citizens of Cottonwood, and we're impacting them. And I can't state that more strongly, that they are people that have committed themselves to the city of Cottonwood, and they're also our citizens. So we can't just be casually saying, you know, let's go ahead and cut that. That's $810 for somebody that's making 27 grand a year. It's tremendous to them. It might not be to somebody else, but it is to them, and I can get very passionate about that.
You know, Kyla, I agree with you. The only devil's advocate I'll play is that not all of our employees live in the city of Cottonwood. Well, a lot of them, of course, you know, live in the village or live in Clarkdale, or we have somebody who lives in, I think, Prescott or Prescott Valley. So, you know, not all of them are our citizens. So, you know, that's it. But I do agree with you that it, you know, it's not a lot of money for some.
They do spend their money here, though. They shop here.
I think I've said my piece on it. I will say, I mean, the average wage is in the $40,000 range, isn't it? It's not $20,000.
We'd have to run the numbers, but I believe it's a little bit higher than that.
Higher than that, yeah. I mean, all I'm saying is it all adds up. And if you look at what, you know, fully funded what the merit program is this year, it could fund a lot of the new personnel requests that could relieve some of the burden in some of the departments that we have.
I think we basically have to say no to almost all of the new personnel requests. We don't have the money. I'm trying to find the page, but you know, we don't have $500,000 for these positions.
I get it. I'm just saying, if we were just to say something as simple as we're going to cap the merit this year at 3%, so no one's getting 5%. We're going to adjust the scale, and by doing so, we're going to be able to fund the building official position, which was top of the list. I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm not saying that our employees aren't our biggest asset, because they are. Obviously, they are. But the merit program is in place to you know, to incentivize productivity. And I think there's still a way to do that, just by adjusting the range.
I agree
but
with
I think
you,
I'm going around in circles
but
here. So.
I agree with you, but I think we're outnumbered when it comes to it. So I don't see where we have any money for any of these, you know, positions unless we do. That's why we're here. We make cuts somewhere else, and I don't see where we're making cuts anywhere else. So
We haven't got there yet. It's just the beginning.
What else is what else is going to be presented for us to possibly make cuts? I mean,
well, it's all there. I don't. Is there anywhere you want to go specifically? Might I suggest, as there's certain things that I think we need to be real cognizant of. The building official, there's a reason why he was ranked #1. We're getting ready to open up, we opened up one recent subdivision for 500 homes. We're looking, council just approved the 89 and Vine subdivision, and currently we don't have a building official. We contract that particular job out, and it's very costly to bring someone up from Phoenix, I believe, just to do that work. One of the reasons it ranked up there is because we are going to have quite a number of building construction going on, and we need someone that basically needs to be on site to be able to take care of these things. We currently don't have a building official, and I think I can see where we're going to run through 76 grand real quick if these two subdivisions take off. That's one of the reasons it ranked up there. The second one on there, the business specialist for economic development, she is basically, we brought her on as a grant last year. We discussed what we were going to do with her if by any chance the grant didn't come through. It did not. She basically is the one who is looking for businesses, helping get businesses get started in Cottonwood, and obviously that also in the long run generates revenue. Maybe not right off the bat, but she helps them to establish and recruit, helps Casey recruit people and businesses into the area.
I'm sorry, did you say that the grant was not awarded?
This year.
This year.
It was awarded. We had a $72,000 grant.
Next year. Next year. My apologies, my fiscal years.
So then when does that position expire then?
September 30th.
Right, which is with a federal fiscal year, September 30th
Of this year.
2019.
Okay. Of 2019?
And she is working to locate other
This year.
grants.
Okay.
Sure.
Large in here for just a second. You know, before you just say that we can't afford any of this, I would like you to consider the fact that some employees bring in money to the city. It's not just you can't make a blanket statement and say, we can't afford this. Some of these things you cannot afford not to have. I mean, the way I look at it, and I'm looking at Kathy, we brought in $72,000 to pay for that. We just brought in another $100,000 to pay for some park trails stuff. It's not like we're not bringing in anything. So please be careful when you say, make a blanket statement that we can't afford this. Kathy, since she's been here, I mean, I work with her every day. She's brought in 45 business starts, 45 business starts. Well, the goal was 45 business starts. We brought in 65 business starts. Another goal was 45 new jobs. We brought in 112 jobs. Well, this is all documented. The goal was $1 million of capital investment in the Verde Valley. Now we're looking at 6 months so far. We haven't even made it through the year. In 6 months, the goal was $1 million. We brought in over $1 million in 6 months.
Of capital investment.
Capital investment, and then there's, you know, we're right in the queue right now. We've got $542,000 worth of grants. There's no guarantees we're going to get any of those, but we keep plugging away. So I'll stop here, but some of these jobs create jobs.
And Casey, I agree with you, and I didn't mean, well, all I was trying to say was unless council is willing to make some cuts or revenue, you know, increases, then we can't afford, we can't add $500,000 without cutting or doing something else. That's all I was trying to say. Wasn't.
Okay, so where are we with this? This is what the city manager, the mayor, Kirsten, and myself wrangle with every year. What do we want to do? Again, the difference between this year and previous years is that we're at a point where it's not about expenditures, it's about revenues. The same story that Casey brings up here can easily be made by just about everyone in here about the staffing needs that they have. They're all important, they're all crucial. And every year in the past, we've made a decision to tell them, you can't have that. You can't have that. Can you push it off to next year? Well, all that pushing to next year is like shoveling dirt to the side. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And as you can see, it's grown to be a pretty good sized mound.
I personally, just looking at the personnel requests, when I went through these, I reread it again this morning. The building official is high on my list. The business specialist is very high on my list because she actually pays for her way. I mean, she's a position that with the amount of money she brings in grants, in business, if you were to do apples and oranges, she actually pays her way. And the other one would be number 4, which is the accounting specialist. As we were brought vivid attention to when we got our audit this last month, it was shown that we had a deficiency, and the repetition of that deficiency year after year is because there was not enough personnel in the finance department. And they've had to, every year we're getting binged for the exact same thing because we don't have the people there to staff it. Now, this is the tough part of our job. We need these people to just say, we're not gonna hire these people. Okay, then next year we're gonna get binged again for the exact same thing. Do we wanna improve or do we wanna stay where we are? So those 3 positions are high on my list to bring on. How do we bring that on? We're doing these other cuts, and then we got to talk the sales tax. And people are scared to talk about it, and I'm not scared to talk about it. I mean, we've got people out there that are, other communities around us that are charging more for sales tax that do less. We do so much for our citizens. We provide so many services, and the number 1 and 2 service that a community has to provide when you're a municipality, the 2 items you must provide, and the reason for our being is public safety. That's it, period. So we have to continue to support those 2 agencies, and expenses are going up, and it's something we're going to have to look at. I live in the city of Cottonwood, and I don't have $1 million house. I live in the low rent district. Sales tax will affect me as I go out and I do my purchases, but I also know that we're providing services to citizens. This is what they want. They're not getting something for nothing for something. We're providing services. So I really think we need to talk about that seriously, increasing our sales tax, and not shy away from it because somebody's going to
I agree
not
with
vote
you.
for me or
I
whatever.
brought it up earlier that it was something we needed to talk about. I agree. I mean, like I said, Sedona just recently increased theirs. I think you went through it too quickly. I couldn't write them down, but most of the surrounding communities are already higher than us as far as sales tax goes.
What was Sedona's? What did you say they were up to?
Sedona's just went up to 3.5%. And with that, they have a fire district. They don't have, the airport is independent, the library's independent, most of their parks and rec programs are all independent. And obviously the biggest one, of course, is they have a fire district that's funded through property tax. So,
Here it is.
and the ones I mentioned, you know, even Camp Verde right nearby, they have a fire district. They don't have an airport, they don't have a rec center. You know, again, we're doing everything on 3% sales tax. And on top of that, I think a lot of the projects we're doing them on the back of a lot of our employees.
That's right.
Because whenever we have events, we have public works and utility people that come in and work on weekends, and it's nice, I guess it's nice to get overtime, but when we have events, especially once they get cranked up in the summer, we have events almost every single weekend, and we get to the point where some of the employees are basically saying, enough, we can't keep this up because we don't have staffing. And we keep using the same people over and over and over again. It's not about the money for them at the overtime, at least. It's about trying to keep up and not burn our staffs out.
We need to have a serious talk about increasing the sales tax.
There are other revenues, but the reason we talk sales tax is because that makes up over 50% of the general fund. All the other taxes fees for services that we have are all basically small. We've talked about them before with this council, and they've been sent back to more evaluation. We have those numbers available for council, but they're not millions of dollars. They're tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands at best, and they're in the very small hundreds.
So what's the process of raising the sales tax?
Well, first of all, council needs to make a decision as to where they want to put the sales tax rate. We go ahead and get a notice of intent. It takes a certain amount of time to get it through notice of intent. Then we have public hearings, and then we go ahead at the second public hearing. We can adopt it 30 days after the adoption. It becomes instituted, roughly speaking. I say roughly speaking because every time we have to do a notice of intent, I have to go to Mary Ann, Matt, or Steve and have them back me into it, because that seems like one of those things that just doesn't stick in my head because it's not something I really like to do.
I think one of the important things to do when we go this route, if we're going to go this route, is to notify and make it as clear as possible to the public that this just isn't money in the bucket, that this is focused such as for our infrastructure, that they understand. I know we can't put it in that pocket, but if we were to take a 0.65 increase or a 0.5% increase and focus that to offset our infrastructure, that funds could then be used to take care of these other costs. I don't know the exact mechanics of that, Rudy. That would be through you.
We as in the city of Cottonwood, council has the authority to go ahead and raise sales tax. In the past, we have designated portions of sales tax to, let's say, we did it for our increase in contracting sales tax. We dedicated extra 1% to them. Council can do those kind of things. The good thing about it is that if council institutes it, and let's just say we end up having, God forbid, too much money in a pot, then council can go ahead and make the change and revert it back or allocate it to some other place. But you know, those are council prerogatives there. You can allocate and you can go ahead and make changes in the future. That's a good thing.
I think, and I agree with you. I think if we were to consider a sales tax increase, you know, I like the idea of saying this is what here's the deficit in our community and this is what the money's going towards, which is like Sedona, when they increased 0.5%, I believe it's going toward fixing some of the traffic issues that they're having in their community.
It's going to transportation.
Transportation. So, but in this case, we're looking at funding personnel requests and reclassifications, and it's going into the general fund. That's what we need to do, is bolster our general fund so we can afford the list that we've been presented with tonight, correct? We do nothing and we're still 1.5 million short of a balanced budget.
Right. I think the general fund, as you may recall, we had restrictions on sales tax at one time. Part of it went to sewer, part of it went to streets. And then we decided during the down economy to remove those restrictions and put it into general fund, because general fund is responsible for every other fund, even the enterprise funds. If they don't produce sufficient revenue, the general fund will make them whole. We make the library whole, nearly $1 million. We make HERF whole. They haven't had good HERF revenues in years. We keep making them whole to several hundred thousands of dollars every single year. We fund CATS out of general fund. So the general fund is the one that's taking the hits, and that's the one that concerns us, of course, because we don't have the reserves we used to have in the past. And on that note, let me also mention is one of the things, and I've talked with this to Tosca Henry, and I believe we have talked before, is any revenue that we go ahead and institute during this budget season, we don't have the time to put it into the budget as an actual increase because it may falter in the end. We will have to put it in as other revenue until such time as we actually approve it, then we can go ahead and reclassify it into sales tax or whatever fees that we need to put it in. But one of the things that's a priority for me is that whatever we do, whatever amount we go ahead and allocate in sales tax, I think it's imperative that we designate a certain amount of that to go cash in the bank for reserves. We've already gone over 10 years without a downturn in the economy, and it's just a matter of time. I'm not giving you the sky is falling, but I don't want to be the one, or I don't want a person to be the one that's the fall guy when the economy drops in the next 2-3 years and we don't have reserves. So to me, it's a priority that whatever we do, and we get to a balance of the budget, I think if it's a sales tax, I think we should take a portion of that and make sure that that's the first thing that's going to go into the savings bucket, and then the rest of it we'll allocate as we see fit. And mind you, if we were to go out and let's just say, let me back it up to, we'll back this one up to the sales tax. Let me kind of also make something very clear. Even in the years when we had plenty of resources, when we had that extra 1% sales tax and we were putting it aside way back when, we never went out and budgeted everything we had in the budget. We always made sure that we're going to set a big portion aside, and we still went through the budget process. Just because we have all these demands or requests for personnel, part-time, reclassification, capital, does not mean that if you give us, let's just say you give us a 1% or there's $5 million, does not mean we're going to run back and tell everybody, hooray, we've got a bunch of cash we're going to spend.
No.
We're a lot more frugal than that.
Yes.
We will go out and we will go through the same budget cutting process we have in the past. Tell the department heads, what do you really need, okay? And we will trim it down. And any excess, we put aside. Just to assure you, whatever we get, we will make it work, and we will always try to put as much aside as we possibly can.
You know, I'm sitting here trying to figure out how to give you the information you need to come up with an idea in terms of sales tax increases. And so what I guess I would propose to the council is, how about if staff takes this information back, comes up with some different scenarios in terms of different levels of sales tax and what could be funded and what couldn't be funded, and bring those scenarios back to you. And again, we would make decisions in terms of what are the priority things that we need to fund, and then maybe even put them into categories in terms of any money above the basic budget, personnel we've got to have, capital projects we really need to do, and then everything beyond that as well, looking at, you know, whether it's street projects, sidewalk projects, reserves, those kind of things. Let us come up with some scenarios that we can come back to you and say, hey, here's, you know, 1 through 3 or 1 through 5. Do any of these work for you in terms of a sales tax increase and how we would use those additional revenues?
I like that idea. I also, and I know it's been provided before, but in that if we could get, and I know you rattled it off tonight, but if we could get what the other communities' sales tax is as part of that. And I know it's been provided to us before, but you know, we don't bring our stacks of city council packets with us. So.
Do you want just the percentages for the region, or the amount of money that it brings in?
No, just the percentages. So, I mean, you said Sedona is 3.5, so that makes it total of 9.85. But, you know, if we could get, you know, Camp Verde and Clarkdale doesn't really have anything. But other communities where, you know, people, I mean, Sedona's and
Camp Verde are probably
roads, yeah.
the best two, maybe Prescott. I know, I go to Costco over in Prescott. We don't have one here, you know, but, you know, maybe, you know, but where people can shop, maybe Flagstaff, I don't know.
Would you like it more extensive than, because ours, we just gave like 4 or 5 of them. We didn't give very many of them. We can get you.
No, I just think who we'd be competing, who we'd be competing with in this
Okay.
area where people could go shopping.
You know, and just, again, an observation, some data that Rudy had put together, I know last year and maybe the year before, if we looked at what our sales tax generation was back in 2006 compared to our tax rate today and where we should be,
Right.
we should be at about $18 million in terms of sales tax revenues. And, you know, we're in a pretty good economy right now, and we should be at that number. We should be hitting double-digit sales tax increases every year. And again, I mean, this is a hypothesis, but I think a lot of cities would agree with me because they're experiencing it across the nation, is we're getting killed by internet sales. Mm-hmm. We don't realize those revenues that where people are spending on the internet.
It's so easy to do.
Yeah.
It's, I mean.
It is.
It's-
And I don't know what the long-term fix for that is, but somehow they've got to start to recognize that local cities and towns are going to continue to suffer more and more as it gets easier and easier to just do it online. So,
And since we are the hub for the Verde Valley, we need to raise it so that we can collect the funding to provide the services that we provide.
yep.
Well, and I think, I mean, we have people, you know, we have the Walmart, you know, and so we have people coming in, and that's not necessarily our street, you know, 260, but we have people coming in from other communities using our streets, and that type of stuff we have to be able to fund, you know.
Okay, well, we'll put together some scenarios, and Rudy and I and, you know, anybody who would like to join us to sit down and talk about what realistically can we fund, and, you know, what kind of sales tax would that take in conjunction with, you know, kind of boosting our ability to maybe do streets and sidewalks, other infrastructure projects, and also to fill our reserve needs as well.
Great. Can we get a scenario too on what happens if we do nothing and we have that $1.5 million deficit?
Yeah, you know, and essentially what you saw was probably the culmination of several years of balancing the budget. We've just pushed it out, and, you know, now we're at the point where we've pushed about as far as we can push.
And I don't believe we're the only one that's been doing that. I
No.
know communities throughout the state have been doing
Yeah,
that.
I've been doing that. So, yeah, if you look at the employment numbers, all the growth in employment isn't happening in the government section. I mean, it's happening in private industry. And so consequently, I think there's a lot of cities out there that are still trying to recover, and probably a lot of it has to do also is with the retirement liabilities that everybody's been saddled with now. So, okay.
Okay.
The retirement liabilities that we currently have, I think all we're doing is going status quo, what we've done in the past, paying it out early, paying in for drop programs. Since you mentioned that, a lot of cities have actually increased their sales tax or their property taxes or other fees to try to buy down that liability. Because as you notice, even though we're diligently putting money in there, extra money in there, our liability went up this last year in all of our pensions. That isn't being contemplated here. We're not asking for extra money for those. We're still staying the course, planning to eliminate our liability in the next 20 years. So that could be a topic of discussion if we want to add some extra money to those to the pensions. But
I mean, that should, I think, be part of that scenario that you bring back to us, is to try to get that knocked down as an option.
So in that context, I mean, our next meeting is Thursday night. I mean, I don't know if we can pull the scenarios together that quickly. So we may need to.
We've got meetings scheduled tentatively for next week.
Yeah.
May 8th and
10th,
May 8th and 10th.
And so.
not next week. Following week.
Okay.
So probably the good news is we can
So-
take Thursday night off.
Can we get, I mean, can we get that in advance, or is that on her spreadsheet that, because I don't have it on my calendar for May 8th, and, I mean, May 8th is probably the normal Tuesday.
Right, that's a
but
regular work session.
I'm not aware of the Thursday.
Oh, Kirsten and I just spoke about that on, was it Friday or Monday? Friday, that we may need, looking at what we were presenting to you tonight, that we may need an extra meeting in there. So what we had talked about was the 10th, the Thursday, May 10th.
I'm just asking if, you know, we can get notice, at much advance notice of stuff like that as possible, because some of us have a lot of other commitments. I've canceled for this Thursday, but I usually have another commitment on Thursday night.
Well, we had no idea because it depended on how much the council went through tonight and on Thursday. So it's hard to give you an idea because we don't know how far along in the budget we'll get during these 3 budget meetings.
I guess what I'm saying is, if you think we might need it, let us know. It's better to say, hey, we might have a meeting, and so I can block my calendar, than to have a meeting sneak up on us.
And my assumption
Does that make
is that
sense?
the city council all received the calendar.
And it had the 8th, it just didn't have the 10th.
10th, okay.
Okay.
You know, and probably the important date is we've got to present a tentative budget to the council no later than,
The 3rd week in July.
so we've got a little bit of time, but.
So can I ask?
No, we don't have a little bit of time.
Well, I think.
But to give them the opportunity to actually put it together.
I think allowing us to put together options may make it run a little bit smoother than what we're looking at this point is, here's everything, tell us what you want to do. It makes it a little bit difficult. It's awkward standing up here watching council when I know it's a tough task. But I think this will help us kind of streamline, give you some options, and you can give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, make some changes, come back later, and we can go from there.
Can I ask what is on, are we still having this Thursday's meeting?
No.
Thursday. Because we haven't gotten a packet or anything.
Yeah,
so.
we won't have anything for you by Thursday if we're doing the scenarios.
Okay.
So the next meeting would be May 8th, and
But the next city council meeting would be May 1st.
where we'll discuss the budget
During the work
options.
session, a regular
Yeah,
work session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to staff to try to get this discussion to happen on during the
No.
first meeting in May? Or not?
Which do you prefer?
Is that enough time for you to get
No,
this?
I think the 8th is
Okay.
probably better if we're doing scenarios with figures to be able to give you different.
I mean, I hope you've
It
got
takes
clear
us
enough
a little while.
direction from council. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like council's leaning toward a sales tax increase. We just don't know the amount yet. So I think
Right.
hopefully you've got enough information to
Yeah.
get something together where we can pick and choose.
You know, and just one more statement that I think is important for the council to recognize is, you know, we're going to cut COLA, we're going to cut longevity if that's what the council wants us to do, but all of those do have a cost. You know, you're saving money, but there's also a cost, particularly when you have a very competitive employment market. You end up losing people. And that's one of the reasons we rushed the communications specialists in here. The starting salary for communications specialists up in Sedona is higher than what we start here. And I can tell you that they don't work anywhere near as hard as our communication specialists do. We're having a hard time getting them. And we certainly have got to be competitive in that area. But whatever cut you make to employees, it reverberates down in terms of, are you losing good employees to other, employers out there that are remaining competitive? So just something to keep in mind. And, it's been a scenario when I first got here in 2005. I mean, pretty much, and Kyla remembers this. I mean, a lot of times we were balancing the budget on the backs of employees, and we were turning over people like you wouldn't believe. So.
And I just wanted to kind of go back a little bit. There are some positions in here that we wanted to, I'm sorry, it's late, reclassify without a cost. I think those should be a given from my perspective to go ahead and approve those and put those in the budget because there's not a cost attached to them. They just get their range. They get a higher range.
And I think the library ones too. And
There was a couple of them in there. There's three, I think.
A small cost for the library, but just given, and maybe the maintenance, just given the fact that a minimum wage, went up, we have to, take care of those lower level employees that are just barely, at or above the minimum wage. So I think any of the ones that had I can't remember, the 1 or 2 is the.
There was 3 reclass with no cost.
Well, no, I meant the little footnotes, title change only, and then reclassification.
To ensure that full-time employees earn more than minimum wage.
Yes, so anybody with one of those 2 notes, I think, I mean, it's not our fault. I voted no. It's not our fault minimum wage went up. I mean, the people approved, the citizens of Arizona approved it. So.
Just another point of clarification. The 2 rec center spots right there, they're there for a reason. As you may recall, we made some changes. We have a new library director that happened to come out of the rec center, doing a fantastic job over at the library. We have to reorganize, and that's where those 2 positions, being the rec center positions there, are there for a reason. They are part of the organization over there. They still allow us to save some money, even though there's a slight cost involved. It's minimal compared to the savings of actually losing 1 person out of that department altogether.
And I'll just say it. I'm not a big fan of number 7, the court clerk too. I feel like it's the judge's 3rd attempt at requesting this increase, and so I'm not a fan of it. That was just my first instinct when I saw it.
You've got some work cut out.
We threw it back at you.
And that's fine. That's what we do. Well, we'll put together some options for you, and we'll try to schedule it for the 8th work session. And we'll as soon as we can put it together, we'll get it out to council so you have time to digest it and stuff, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
By all means, during this time, if any suggestions come up, by all means, send them over to our city manager, to Kirsten and myself, or all 3 of us better, so that way, when we do sit down and work through this, we have an idea of any type of concerns you might have, and we'll be able to deal with them with the options that we bring to you.
Great job, you guys, everybody. Great job.
Thank you. All right, if there's nothing else, then I'd move that we adjourn.
Second?
Mayor made the motion, Vice Mayor seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks.